Hello and welcome to another episode of the djproject Criterion Collection. And here we're going to talk about Spine 226, Onibaba, directed by Kaneto Shindô, 1964. After a string of heavy-duty films that deal with weighty themes, it's always nice to have something that kind of goes back to basics, and this is definitely one of them. This is pretty much all about sex. When you really get down to it, it's all about sex. And no, this isn't porn. Okay, the story is, this is set during the Warring States period, the 14th century, where it wasn't sure who the emperor is, and everybody's fighting each other for various positions. It was a very chaotic time. It's a very popular period for a lot of filmmakers to go into. Kurosawa liked going back to this period. Mizoguchi went back to this period, and this is really no different. What this focuses on are these two women who the only way that they could survive is by killing any and all stray samurai that come their way and stealing their goods and then trading them for food. That's how they live, and they live in the midst of these Suzuki grass fields, which, looking at them, it looks like it looks like palm leaves. It's just this really thick reed, actually not reed, but just these thick grass fields is what they're in the middle of. And one day, this man named Hachi returns, and he lives in the area. He used to live in the area, and he was with the older women's. Unfortunately, the women are not named, so this definitely fails the Bleichstell test, and fails it for other reasons. But at any rate, but Hachi returns, and he gives an account of what had happened to him, including what happens to older woman's son and younger woman's husband. So the relationship is mother-daughter-in-law. And mother doesn't take this very well. Wife now widow, does not take this particularly well. And but it kind of ends there. Then it goes on, and Hachi, because of various contributing factors, like the weather, like the fact that this war is going on, and the fact that she's there and available, he feels a little bit horny. Basically, almost everybody is a dog in heat in this little world, and there's a bit of resistance, and eventually all of it caves in. And mother finds out about this, is not particularly pleased with all of this, and tries to come up with ways to try to thwart them. But then one day she encounters another samurai comes in who wears this demon mask, and she. To make that long story short, she ends up killing him and taking the mask, and so she decides to use the mask to try to scare off her daughter-in-law from going to see Hachi, and it works for a spell, but the mask actually is ingrained onto her face, so she can't possibly take it off, and she begs her daughter-in-law to do this for her, and she reluctantly agrees on the condition that she would be allowed to see Hachi. Of course, Hachi is also killed by her, unbeknownst to daughter-in-law or widow. But anyways, see, this is what makes it complicated of not having any names for any of the characters. It makes it really hard. So, but anyways, she agrees to take off the mask. So it's really difficult, but she does eventually take it off. But as a result, the mask causes a lot of sores on her face, and Widower takes it to mean that she's really turned into a demon. And it ends with a chase between the two of them, and where mother is trying to convince daughter-in-law that, no, I'm really a human being. I'm not a demon. Basically, this is a kind of you can think of this as a hyper-extended Twilight Zone episode, the way it plays out. The story itself, the story is original, but it's based in... Its roots are from a couple of Shin Buddhist fables, particularly in regards to the mask. The mask used as a scare tactic to get someone away from somewhere, and then also the idea of a mask being imprinted onto a face, and you can't take it off. So, I mean, really, there's a kind of, it's a very simple story. I mean, there's not a whole lot of, but I will say that what Shindô was interested in, this is why I say it's a lot about sex, is that Shindô was interested in exploring sex, not in a lewd or prurient interest way, but just kind of the nature of sex. And it is the way that it's the way that we continue on to the next generation. It is a part of life. In some places and times, it's more prominent and more upfront than in others, but it's still ever there. And really, the film was an excuse to try to explore those. Again, this isn't porn. This has nothing to do with pornography at all. It has everything to do with just the nature of sexual desire, like what brings two people together? Why do they bring two people together? What are the limits we put? And that's really what it is. And it's done in a fairly straightforward horror way. It's billed as a horror film. And again, this is where this is a hyper extended Twilight Zone episode is really what this is. It can be a little bit slow as far as the pacing, but it's never dull. You don't feel like there's a total wasted moment, and I think it's because you have things set up. You also have conflicts and parameters that are set up, and trying to come up with various ways of working around certain parameters. You get the sense that there's a lot of barriers, which is interesting considering that this is all filmed in the midst of this Suzuki grass field, which is very, very open, but it still feels very limited and tight in some respects. And also given the fact that it was shot in CinemaScope, so there's the emphasis on the horizontal. But even then, it still feels very, very contained. That's really... Again, this is not one of those films where you can spend like hours upon hours talking about it. I mean, once you see it, you pretty much kind of get what it is, and it's fairly straightforward. And but it's sometimes you just want to watch something that's kind of fun, and that certainly doesn't insult your intelligence, and it definitely doesn't insult your intelligence in any way. And again, this is not porn, so it's enjoyable in that. It's enjoyable in that it's not porn. No, but it's a through and through entertaining film that's done really well. The cinematography, the cinematography, it feels expansive, but at the same time, it feels very confined. It's very visceral in a lot of respects. This is all in the midst of an intense summer, and just the notion of everybody being in heat in more ways than one also informs a lot of it. The art design is very simple and almost primitive, but it's all done to showcase what Shindô was interested in exploring, and this is actually why he said it during the Warring States period, because it was a very simple time, according to him, where the morality was on the one hand fairly straightforward, but on the other hand kind of ambiguous or kind of not really clearly defined, since it was a state of chaos anyway. So it was almost like anything went. But the transactions and the stakes were simpler at that time, because it was really just about survival. It was about getting through the one day to the next, and so you didn't have a lot of, so there's not a lot of complications in that respect. So it was pretty straightforward. And then the other aspect when it does show up is the music is really interesting. The music is done by Hikaru Hayashi, who has collaborated with Shindô through, I think, nearly all of his career. And the style is a combination of taiko drumming and jazz, and it's very percussive, and there's this energy and so forth. And actually, one of my favorite cue moments is you hear this in the beginning, and you also hear this towards the end as well. It's this French drumming, and then occasionally you hear this no singer that does this and there's just something kind of primal about it, and has this nice little energy and vibe, and it's kind of addicting in a certain respect. So yeah, it's straightforward. It's about sex. And it's a hyper-extended Twilight Zone episode. And again, it's not porn. So really, I mean, what more can you say about it? So if you just want those moments where you just want an enjoyable film, but you feel like that there's a little bit more, I don't want to degrade it and say, oh, it's just mere entertainment. It's not. I mean, again, the story is pretty straightforward. It's fairly simple. But the additions are mild enough to make it more than just a simple, it's just a film you just kind of watch once and then you don't really think about it. There's a bit more to it that invites some repeat viewings, but the repeat viewings are not because that there's things you want to extrapolate from it. It's just more because you want to give your brain a rest, because you've been dealing with. Because maybe you've been dealing with a lot of films with a lot of depth, and basically your brain needs a break. Sometimes it's good to have a break. In fact, Sam Brakhage was one to watch what he calls narrative films, just basically going to the cinema and just watching a film for an hour and a half or 2 hours just to cool off the brain. And considering the kind of films that he made, it's good to have that kind of break. So even guys who spend all of his, doing these little vlog episodes talking about his Criterion disc, sometimes I need a break. And it's good to have a break with Onibaba. So yeah. And with that, we're now 2/5 of the way through this little endeavor. So 60 down, 90 to go. And that, my friends, was Onibaba. And until next time, take care.